everybody, and welcome back to the Harder Not Smarter podcast. Today we have the notorious Mark Devine. Anybody that has been at all involved with the special operations community, I know Greg mentioned that he actually heard of SealFit when he was getting ready to join the Army to go through selection. I worked directly with Mark Devine when I was still a Marine before I was ever a SEAL, when I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I want to get involved with it. Mark started the SealFit program back in when was that, Mark?
2006.
2006. And I found out about it online, and I was actually living in Del Mar, and I saw that there was an Encinitas address on it. I'm like, that's like 2 towns over. So I just drove on over there and signed up for his program, was going through it. He has been an entrepreneur, an author, a podcast host. He has a newsletter article. He's got a little bit of everything going on. So, Mark, welcome to the show. I'm excited to talk with you.
Yeah, likewise, Kevin and Greg. Really nice to meet you, Greg. Kevin, it's great to see you again, man.
Absolutely.
Great days. You know, we had that training center for 10 years.
That was so much fun.
It was amazing. It was like a little mini Buds compound, right? With a big open area ringed with pull-up bars. And then, you know, we had the mat room for rolling around, self-defense, jiu-jitsu. We had the yoga room, which none of my SEAL instructor buddies would step foot in for some strange reason.
Great, touch that yoga stuff. Yeah, everybody does yoga.
If anyone could be credited with bringing yoga into the SEALs, it's definitely SealFit. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
We were teaching it and doing it before and after. We just had to stop calling it yoga. You know, we called it integrated movement. Right?
Yeah, you got to give it a better name.
Yeah.
Still have the spandex and everything. Yeah, that compound was legendary. I mean, it's literally in the heart. So anybody not familiar with Encinitas, it's a small town between San Diego and Oceanside where Camp Pendleton is. It used to be the wildflower capital of the world. It's where poinsettias were basically popularized. There's still a bunch of plant nurseries here, but it used to just be a very rural town. You basically drove through on the way south to San Diego. It had a big surfing culture, still has a big surfing culture. A lot of professional snowboarders would come here in the off season. That's how Sean Lake ended up here.
Spiritual yoga community with the Self-Realization Fellowship started by Yogananda, and some of the top yoga teachers in the world kind of, embarked here and planted their flag.
Yeah, and the SealFit compound was right in the heart of the historic downtown area. It was like 2 streets off of Coast Highway, and it was you guys slowly bought all the buildings in that complex. You started out with just the glass one. We
didn't buy them, which was the unfortunate.
Acquired them.
We did lease them, so almost all the units in that building, including the apartments, where we used to house the full-time SealFit Academy peeps, and the interns lived in the garage. Remember that? So you could literally come if you were a good dude and serious about your training, and we could tell right away because the training was backbreaking, as you recall.
Brutal.
And so the guys who weren't serious didn't make it past a few days anyways. So we would let you live on site for free as long as you just cleaned up and were helpful.
Yeah, it's very much that monk mentality. Like show up, get the mind right for training. Yeah. There were so many guys that ended up as SEALs that went through that program. So I was a Marine for 3 years here, 4 years total, but 3 years here in San Diego. And just seeing the guys cycle through the academy, going through the Coral Camp, which was the 50-hour mini Hell Week, I guess you can call it. Back in the day, there's at 2 a.m, you see guys running by with camis and white shirts carrying a log, and the truck going by. They'd be getting wet and sandy down at Moonlight Beach. Right. It was such a wild and fun time, but it was a phenomenal training program for anybody wanting to become a SEAL, because you can. I think honestly that the most advantageous part of going through that academy was that it gave you a glimpse of what you were getting into, and you built a community of people, because now you had people in front of you and behind you that were going through the SEAL pipeline. And so you had people you can talk to.
Real SEAL instructors and mentors, like Dan Cirillo and Mark James, who was an actual instructor down in Buds, and a bunch of others. And those guys were there for, the recruits. They're like, okay, just reach out, hold their hand. It was pretty extraordinary. We don't do the, we don't have the training center anymore. In fact, our exuberance and enthusiasm for that outdoor training and, kind of that rugged, austere military style fitness eventually caught up to us. So we had a few people complain, and rightfully so. Of course, we were indignant at the time, but
Yeah, yeah.
like we don't really like people screaming "hoo-yah" at 2 a.m. in our back alley, carrying a log, and it's dangerous for you guys to be running up the street with a body over your shoulders. Like, what are you doing? And so the city finally came down and said, "Yeah, we got these complaints. So we're reactionary. We haven't touched. We have no problem with you, but now we have complaints." So they said, the one thing they could find was like, "Oh, you know what? You're a gym, so you need a major use permit." And we're like, "Wait a minute. We have like a yoga studio here. They don't need a use permit. And we have a little martial arts studio. They don't need a major use permit. And we actually have a CrossFit gym, and CrossFit gyms don't need a major use permit. So why do we need one?" And they couldn't answer that. They just said, "Well, you just need one." So we spent like $10,000, went through all these hearings, and we got our permit. And the permit said you can't work outside.
That was
right? And we're
the
like,
beginning to the end.
Yeah, no, that was the end. We're just like, what do you mean we can't? Our entire program is outside.
Yeah, it was this cool courtyard, and it had all the pull-up bars and the lifting racks. We'd bring it all out. We'd have the sandbags. There's some cool competitions we had there too, just through US CrossFit, which was the CrossFit gym. So it was interesting that you were able to blend, CrossFit with other functional fitnesses like the yoga, the meditation, the mindset work, and then obviously the grueling beatdown of getting wet, sandy, running up and down those hills.
Right.
But I think you hit the nail on the head when we were talking about it earlier, with Encinitas being this essentially mecca of yoga in America, and then you're mixing that with the elite warrior mentality of
Right.
Of
They didn't
SEALs.
really, even though you and I know they fit perfectly. Right. I had many people, some Indian guys, come up and just be in awe at what we were doing, because they're like, "This is yoga. Like, what you're doing is yoga. It's the same thing. It's the training of the mind, body, and spirit, and like the constant like refining and grinding that ego down to be able to operate with more, shibumi, effortless perfection, or wei wu wei, action without the actor." And that's, when you talk about an operator who is in its flow state in the middle of a firefight, ego has to be checked at the door. You are doing nothing but pure action, and it's flowing through you. And that's what this training did. And it's not dissimilar to the training of a effective yoga program. I'm not talking about core power yoga. I mean, a real yoga where they're doing the ethical principles, kind of the wax on, wax off preparation. The asana was all about healthy body, mind, and being able to sit for the next phases, which were sensory awareness, like our situational awareness. And then they got into concentrate or breath work and concentration. And then only when the student was ready would they really get into the meditation phase, right? And those are called the 8 limbs, Ashtanga. So we were doing all that. We just used different tools and methods and kind of a English language that was simple to understand. Remember early on when I started to teach yoga to the SEAL candidates, and I was using the Sanskrit words for the poses and, talking about pranayama, the breath work, and their eyes were just rolling in the back of their head. Like, what is this bullshit? So I realized quickly, I said, I got to take the foo out of the kung fu here, So I just broke everything down into drills. I called the breathing box breathing, and I had very practical terms for why they needed to do it. Not like this isn't an option. Like, this is going to save your life. It's going to make you a better warrior, and here's why. And all the science behind it that was available in 2006. So we basically introduced box breathing back into the military. There were a few guys who kind of did it. They called it square breathing. So I don't take ownership of that. No one can. It's like pranayama has been around for probably millions of years. But one of the cool outcomes of SealFit, Kevin, you probably are aware of this, but maybe not, is that they now teach box breathing. They teach the big 4 skills of unbeatable mind as a practice now, and they do it at BUDS. They never did that before SealFit. And so now they teach box breathing. They teach the visualization skills, the pre-dive, the dirt dive before every evolution of BUDS. And they teach, positive mantras and, all the stuff that we learned at SealFit, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. They just started doing that when I went through. I remember.
Was Mike Maggiani there when you went?
Yeah,
through?
Master Chief Mag. Yeah,
yeah. So he was the one that really kind of pioneered it. And
he was bringing it up. at the end of the day, when he come in and give us the pep talk, he was the nice guy, the grandfatherly one, imparting good advice onto us while the instructors beat us down. There's one day he came in, he's like, when you guys go for the conditioning runs, you want to have that resilient mindset. So you want to go out there thinking that this is going to be the longest run of your life, and so you're just mentally prepared for it to be a grueling event. I would do the exact opposite. I'd be running down, heading south, and be like, we're just going to the demo pits today. So the demo pits, if you're going south down the Strand by the base, there's
it's about a mile, right?
Yeah, it's about a mile south, mile and a half south. It's this fence in the middle of nowhere. There's literally nothing around it. But it was oftentimes a reference point that we would turn around at, like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to the demo pits. We're not running all the way down to State Beach and Imperial Beach today. And we'd run past it and just be like, shattering my mind, like, oh man, we're going so much farther. You just get let down. And I would do that to myself routinely. It's like, we're only going this far, and then let down. Oh, we're definitely going to get out. We're not going to get wet today.
I thought I taught you about the micro goals, Kevin. Bad student.
I would just routinely make it so much more miserable for myself. Whether that was a good thing, I was just like constantly conditioning my mind to be let down and disappointed. There might be some value to that
podcast. Harder, not smarter.
Harder, not smarter. Yeah. You know how I used to get through those? I didn't really. I think we always, like back then, I kind of had a sense for how far we were going to go, based upon the workload of the day and whatnot. But I would always like go out like a bat out of hell, knowing. Remember, we say it's easier to keep up than to catch up.
Oh, for sure. Right? Especially in soft sand.
And I was a decent runner, so I would always make sure I was in the top 5 or so, right up there with the instructor, because I knew the instructor couldn't keep that pace forever.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then so once we hit his inflection point where it was like, okay, he's stretched the candidates out over like half a mile, and now they're going to start goon squatting the guys in the back, he's going to slow down. Right. And now it's still a blistering pace compared to what people are used to, especially running in boots and pants, but it's not a full out sprint. And so now you can get into that breathing pattern. And so I taught myself to just do 3 steps on the inhale and 3 steps on the exhale, and just activate my mantra: feeling good, looking good, ought to be in Hollywood. And it would take literally about...
Wait, say that again?
I'm feeling good, I'm looking good, I ought to be in Hollywood. And I would say that on the inhale and exhale, right? And what that did to my mind was just take it to this really kind of like narrow focus still point. And then I would just get into this really cool flow state where my body could completely relax and just kind of stride. And I found the long runs to be enjoyable in that regard. And I was always in the top 5 or so of the class in running.
You and I had very different
on the swims.
You and I had very different buds experiences.
You were
I was a water polo player.
You learned how to just gut your way through it. I was like,
yeah, I got the swims, the O course, the PT stuff. I was great.
Yeah.
Conditioning runs, it was like, well, today's just going to be a miserable day. I got goon squatted probably 90% of the time.
Get out of here.
It was just like, here we go.
That's great.
There's basically 2 different buds experiences.
The goon squad is interesting to talk about, because the whole point there is, it's,
what is the goon squad?
Okay, so I'll take a whack at it, and then Kevin can. So if you are not in the middle of the pack or at the front of the pack, and you're always consistently near the end, then what they do is the instructors who are bringing up the tail will kind of like, they'll draw a circle around this group of guys at the end, and they'll just stop them, and they'll start fucking with them. So, push-ups, sit-ups, in and out of the surf, they give them extra work, and they still got to do the run. Mm-hmm. But at this point, they pretty much either failed the run, or I don't know, Kevin, I never got goon squad, but you have to, like, it's 2 things about this goon squad. One is you weren't prepared. You should have had a better running skills. So this is your wake-up call. And 2 is the instructors are, one of their kind of implicit jobs. It's not stated overtly, but implicit jobs is to select their next teammate, right? Select the next set of teammates, because the guys who roll out of buds go to a team, and guess what? That instructor rolls out, goes to the same team, and hey, there's Mark, or there's Kevin. I put him through buds. And if I look at Kevin and I'm like, man, that guy was a shithead, I don't want to operate with him, then I failed as an instructor, right?
Yeah.
So the goon squad, if you're not like really strong and have a, like that bulldog mentality like Kevin did, you get goon squad a few times and you're putting out all that extra energy that the rest of the guys are not, and the class just keeps on charging ahead, and every week you've got to beat your scores. Then these guys start to get burned out and they lose their motivation. And so it's a mechanism to kind of weed out, people who don't belong there.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Not everyone's going to be a great runner. As I was saying before, there's basically two different experiences. Buds is 80% running. There's a lot of other things in there, but especially if they're in first phase, it's a lot of running. Whether you're running with the log, doing conditioning runs, doing timed evolutions, running with the boat on your head, just going back and forth to the chow hall, you're running and doing stuff everywhere. And so there's the people that are talented runners that either through natural ability or through the sports and stuff they did were skilled at it. And then there's people who are just going to struggle with it. I was a good athlete and I could run well enough. I failed 2 timed runs by a collective 3 seconds. Like, it's the most demoralizing thing ever. They literally cut the time off and just sent me right to the surf. I missed it by that much. Jeez. So I was always right on that cusp. But I was an aggressive and just a bullheaded person where, hey, we're gonna have to do chest carry with the log down to the dump pit. Cool, I'll do that. Like, I was just my mentality of we're gonna push through this. And so the goon squad for me, it wasn't as bad. It was miserable because I know I'm still gonna have to run, but it was just like I can get through this a lot easier than I can get through running on soft sand. So I might as well just deal with this stuff. It actually made or helped me develop really good relationships with the instructors, because I would, a lot of times in the goon squad, it would be new races. So while everyone else was resting, they'd be having us do berm sprints or buddy carries and stuff like that. And I'd get out there and I'd win those races, and they'd be like, all right, Kevin, you can go back to join the rest of your class while the goon squad continues. Yeah. And so you're able to demonstrate your value in something other than running. And so I was like, all right, I'll just kick ass here, and then I'll go rest a little bit later.
That's the other kind of part of it, is they're even within the goon squad, they know there's some really good guys who are worthy. They're looking for the attitude, right? Mm-hmm. So the guys who take it as a victim and woe is me, and I didn't, I suck at running and now I'm getting punished, that comes out really quickly. But if you have the attitude, all right, this is where we are, let's bring it, stay present, and just put your heart into this, right? And they like to see that.
Kevin, all I'm hearing right now is that you were like the old lady at the pool who's very buoyant and can swim well. That's all I'm envisioning right now.
Yeah. I was good at the O course too. I was always in like the top 3 with that one. I was like, oh, O course day? Because the way they do it is you have a whole class, especially during first phase, you have 150 students. And so if you're at the top of the pack, they can only have 2 people running at a time. And so by the time the first ones are done, like, they're barely into the group. And so when I'd finish the O course, I'd now sit in the middle and we just start basically stretching for the next 45 minutes while everyone else finishes. Mm-hmm. And so those days were great. I'm like, sweet, O course today. 7 minutes, done. Gonna go stretch for a little bit. But there's some people that are amazing runners and they get to the O course and they can't do an obstacle, and they're constantly stressing in their mind, like, if I don't get this obstacle, I'm going to fail the O course, and that's a failed evolution. You only can fail so many of them before you get performance dropped. There are still standards. It's not like you just don't need to quit. You still need to meet certain metrics.
You have to be like a multi-dimensional athlete. Mm-hmm. So people who are like the triathletes or just runners and they've got that tall, lithe kind of triathlon body, they break pretty quickly. And I was in that. I'm not super tall, but 6'1", and I was a triathlete and a good runner, but I was also a competitive swimmer and a martial artist. So I had that, even though I wasn't massive, I was still about 190, 95 pounds, but I had a lot of all around general fitness, even though I was 6'1". And so my fastest O course was sub 7 minutes. And my swimming, I was fortunate enough to be always in the top 5 of everything, which really helped. There was another guy in my class who was kind of neck and neck with me, named Jimmy Mann. But the instructors liked me a lot better. And so part of the honor man, whole deal is the instructors have a say and your peers have a say. So I would bet that Jimmy and I, if we weren't tied in points for all the academic / physical stuff, he might have even been ahead of me. But I remember when I received the Honor Man notification, he was like so bummed because he just thought he had it locked up. But I know the instructors were behind that. Back to that idea, they wanted, they were going to give it to the guy they thought would be a good teammate. Yeah, that's the thing. We don't call it SEAL individuals. We call it SEAL teams, right? And the whole point of Buds is to like teach you to be an exceptional teammate. Remember, we used to say in SealFit, take your eyes off yourself, put them on your teammate, put them on the team, right? If you got a platoon of 14 guys, and everyone is watching out for the other person's, their teammates and their swim buddies' back, then guess what? You turn around to finish up taking care of your gear, and it's done. Someone's taking care of it for you. Or someone said, you know what, dude, this is not right? Anyway, so it really multiplies the power of a team. And I teach this now to businesses, like stop, get out of your head, get out of your ego, and start propping up your team, like rooting for their success. Right? Your job as a leader, even if you're not the de facto leader, is to make your teammates uber successful. Remove the obstacles, support them, be the first one to show up and the last one to leave. Because when you do that, suddenly, this world is one of like cause and effect, or it's energy, right? You put energy into the system, you're going to get an equal amount of energy back, force on force. So if you're putting all that positive energy toward your teammates, guess what you're getting back?
Yeah.
Suddenly your job is really easy, and it becomes effortless because there's all this stuff that's just happening for you and to you that is supportive. And so there becomes a lot less friction in your life.
No, it's really incredible watching a platoon when they're jiving well. I remember it was one time we're finishing up mission planning. We had a lot of the O's and the senior members of the platoon were finishing up the outboard, and I came out and we were basically needed to get ready to go, and I had about 5 minutes, and I thought I had to scramble and get all this stuff together. And I go outside, and in the Humvee and my seat, my kit's already put together. My radios are in it. They're programmed. My helmet's out there. The nods are already on it. My weapon's out there. I was like,
damn, that's awesome.
Oh shit. Like my team just took care of me. I was making sure that they had their stuff so the mission went well. And I come out there and my gear's set up, ready to go, when I thought I was going to be scrambling to get everything together. And it really just keeps going back to that same idea of take care of your team and they'll take care of you.
Right. That's good stuff. Good fun memories.
Oh, so many good memories of the team. I mean, there's a lot of stupidity too that thank God I don't have to deal with that.
I'm finishing up my PhD right now, and I've said several times to my wife, I said, you know what? I would much rather go back through Buds again than do this again.
Oh.
At least Buds was over in 9 months. This is like a 5-year kick in the jimmy.
That is extensive. Speaking of academic stuff, like how did you get into all this mindset, Eastern medicine and mindset and work ethic type stuff? Was that before the teams? Was it while you were in them?
Well, it started before the teams. I grew in this is funny. I don't think you know this, but I was born in upstate New York in a town with 375 people in it. Dairy country,
I knew you're from New York.
Yeah. No, I did work in New York City after college, but my formative years were like in this really small town. Of course, we weren't farmers. My father was like the industrialist. He had a family business that had been passed down since like 1795 in Utica, New York, which was about 30 minutes away. And we lived in this big house surrounded by these small houses. So we were always looked at like the royalty of this tiny little town. It's probably the way it was when the house was built, like everyone around it were like the supporters and the workers. At any rate, it was really confusing because my dad also had this like scarcity mentality, and he was a raging drunk, and it's just like really awful. And of course, I was baked in that family culture, and so I didn't think twice about it. But what it did for me was I didn't want to be under the roof much, and so I spent a lot of time outside. And we spent all our time up in the Adirondacks during the summer on a Lake Placid. And so I just became very intimate, running around like a billy goat on the mountain trails and in the water. And, I became an excellent swimmer and very comfortable in the water. And And so that of course like supported the athleticism. So when I went to Colgate, I swam competitively and I took up triathlons. But the reason I'm telling this story is back to your question is when I followed the herd down to New York from Colgate to, go into like finance. And it was through Coopers and Lybrand, a program where they're going to send me to NYU Business School to get my master's in accounting. But then, all of us knew we were going to get our MBA and become a certified public accountant. And all of that would take 4 years. And then, I could stay. Or, that's a great jumping off point, to go into investment banking or trading or something like that. And so I was kind of dancing to that drum beat of like corporate America. But because of my my love for nature and athletics, and I always saw myself as kind of a lifetime athlete, I was never going to be one of those pasty suits,
Mm-hmm.
So I had this regimen, which you'll smile at. I wake up every morning at 6 and go for like a 6-7 mile run. And then at lunchtime, when everyone else went out to have their high carb lunch and a beer or a martini, I would go to the gym and I would like get a bunch of gear that was available, like put it around me and kind of like pee on it, so don't touch this.
This is all mine.
Eyeball it. This is mine. And then just go around it like a freaking Tasmanian devil as fast as I could for half an hour, and then go back to the office and I'd be sweating for like an hour and a half. A high intensity interval training before I knew what it was.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so Coopers would let us off at 5:30 because we needed to get down to the World Trade Center where NYU was, business school, by 7:30. And so most of my peers in this cohort would go home and, study, eat dinner or whatever. And I was like, I think there's an opportunity for me to get some more training in here. But what could it be? I have a limited time frame. I need something that's kind of structured. And so I was having those thoughts one day, and I was walking home. My apartment was on 22nd Street. I'm walking down 23rd Street, and I hear these shouts coming from the second floor window. And it was like not just like an individual screaming. It was like 100 people screaming. Boss, hoo-yah. It's kind of like the hoo-yah, right? But it was the martial arts hoo-yah. And I look up, and I'm standing under the World Sado Karate headquarters banner. And I'm like, huh. And so I went up into the studio. It wasn't just like 2,000 square foot, beautiful wood floor. There were about 100 students just kicking and punching and screaming. And in the middle of the floor was this Japanese guy, Nakamura, who was the founder of the whole school style of karate. And this guy was a legend in Japan. He was a true master. And there was something really radically different about him that I never observed in another human being to that point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
He was a master, right? It wasn't just the martial arts. It turns out he was also a Zen master. And I found that out because I started training, and a few weeks into my training, I stayed to watch a black belt class on a Thursday night. I said, I want to see what these guys are like. After that class, everyone's getting shuffled out. They're telling me to leave. And the lights go down. And in one corner, I see about 10 black belts get these little wooden benches out. They light a candle. And Nakamura goes over there and they start sitting down. And I said, what are they doing? And the guy I was talking to said, well, that's the Zen class. I was like, what is Zen? And this is 1986. I don't know. Never heard of Zen. And he said, well, get this book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by a guy named Suzuki, and help you understand it. So I devoured the book. That was my first taste of Eastern mental development through the practice of Zen, which in Chinese is called Chan, which is no different than yoga, right? It really is all the same thing, just different cultural kind of
nuances
and how do you explain it to your peeps and that type of thing. Not dissimilar to what we did with SealFit and Unbeatable Mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked Nakamura if I could join. And I wasn't sure because they were all black belts, but he said, sure. And so there I was, a little white belt sitting on a wooden bench. And I had some profound experiences. In fact, the whole reason I ended up being in the SEALs in the Navy was because of that Zen bench. Because as I sat on that Zen bench, and here I'm doing, when you meditate young like that, a lot of transformative things happen because your brain is still developing fast. We now know with neuroplasticity, so you start doing mental development, like real mental development, not the traditional Western just academia, which is conditioning your mind to act in a linear, rational way. But the meditation opens up your contextual awareness, your spontaneous knowingness, your intuition, your insight, all that, all the other perceptual capabilities the mind has that actually get shut down the more and more you just train the rational, linear, kind of left brain thinker. And so it's a lot harder for adults to really to tap into it. And it takes a lot more time and patience. And it can be done. But for a kid, it's got to be in that age where the kid is not as distractible. And so for me, because of my love of nature and being comfortable in silence, and of course, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have an iPhone bolted to our hip and social media, right? So I was able to sit and concentrate on the activities that he asked us to do. So there we go. About 9 months into that training, I started to have these drop-offs into kind of this non-dual, just like everythingness, I call it, where I was everything. And I wasn't not the body, but I wasn't just the body. The thoughts I would see as if from a distance, like clouds passing by. And those states would last either a long period of time or short, but they're always it felt like a forever. And then without any warning, I just snap out of it. And every time that happened to me, and it happened more and more frequently, I would have this sensation that I brought some information back. And I started asking questions like, what is this? What is this telling me? And I kept getting this experience that I was meant to be a warrior. And yet here I was barreling down the path of becoming a CPA, MBA, merchant, basically, making a lot of money. And so those experiences caused me to completely deconstruct the story of my formative years and to see that I was living someone else's story. I was living my parents' story. I was living the story of our culture, the American dream, climbing the corporate ladder, making a lot of money, white picket fence, even the story of the church and state. And I was like, holy shit, that story is actually not who I am. And it took a long time for me to develop the courage to really do something about it because, you get steeped in that. So I call that our phase one human being. That phase one human being is like, you're cooked in the story, you're conditioned to be a certain way, and you think that's who you are. It's like Carol Dweck's fixed mindset. But phase two is you wake up and you say, holy shit, that's not who I really am. And that's not what I'm on this planet for. And if I go down that path and continue down that path, I'm going to live that life of quiet desperation that Thoreau talks about. Mm-hmm. And so I had to ask different questions. Like, if not that, MBA, CPA, money, then what? And if I'm meant to be a warrior, then how? And when I started to ask that question, that's when I was actually shown the SEALs. Because I didn't, this is 1986, 1987. We didn't have like SEAL team on TV,
Yeah. The movie Navy SEALs probably wasn't even out yet, was it?
No, that wasn't even out. I think that came out in
early 90s.
Yeah, early 90s. Horrible movie, by the way.
Oh, terrible.
Terrible.
But entertaining.
Super entertaining.
That's exactly how it
Charlie
was.
Sheen jumping off the bridge. That's just classic.
Don't ever jump off the Coronado Bridge.
Don't jump off the Coronado Bridge. Bad idea. Be the last thing you ever do.
Yep.
Yeah, so that got me even more motivated. So we were, of course, working breath work with the martial arts. That's part of it. I was doing the hard and the soft, meditating before and after class. I started meditating every single morning, meditating every Thursday night. Then we go to the Zen Mountain Monastery with a small group of black belts in Nakamura twice a year for 4 days of meditation with the Zen monks and combined with karate and nature. And I just kept on, moving in this direction of training my mind in really different ways. And of course, that led me to the SEALs. I was, showing the SEALs. I started to add visualization to my training. And so you could see I was doing what we called the big four skills that I taught before I even knew what they were. I learned positive self-talk. I learned that actually from Brian Tracy. I was like, I had to deconstruct everything, every hook and concept and internal pattern that I had developed as a kid. I had to deconstruct it because it wasn't serving me. There was negative conditioning, negative programming. I had low self-esteem, even though I was getting my MBA, CPA, and it was hardcore. but I had this kind of low sense of worthiness because that's what happens when you grow up in abusive families, and you can overcome it, but it takes a little bit of work, right? You gotta unpower all that stuff and then generate entirely new set of concepts and thoughts and internal dialogue and a vision of who you really are and what you want to be in the world. And so I went through that whole process, and November of 1989, I remember this as clear as day, I tested for my first degree black belt. That was like my first real crucible, because it went for hours and hours and hours, and every black belt from the whole tri-state area came in who was in Sato and wanted to get a piece of me, right? So I went through like hundreds and hundreds of fights before Nakamura saw what he was looking for. And that was, the idea of no mind, where I could fight without the ego.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, with hardcore physical training, that will happen, right? You break through some resistance barrier, and that's what's left is essentially just pure awareness, and the action is flowing through you. And that's what he's looking for. But then I also got my MBA, like literally finished up, got my certificate, my MBA, certificate in the mail. And I finished up my CPA, which took me 4 tries to pass that stupid exam. But I got that also in November 1989. So it was a real feeling of completion, because I knew I wanted to be a SEAL, but it took me, as you know, Kevin, and you too, Greg, it takes, at least in the Navy, it could take several years to work your way. It took me 18 months, 2 years to get an OCS slot as an officer. So during that time, I wasn't going to quit what I had started. This is an important lesson. People I train all the time, also for transitioning, right? You don't quit what you start, but you plan and you start what you want to do, right? And so you have to ride 2 horses sometimes. But you got to do it very sensibly, right? Because you can't have the new horse take off before you're finished with the old, stuff, because otherwise you'll leave unfinished business, or you can't put your family at risk and stuff like that, depending on your circumstances. So I did that. I rode both horses, where on one hand, I was training my ass off for the SEALs, working on getting into the program, doing all the, jumping through all those wickets. On the other hand, I was showing up at work and putting out, giving everything I could, even though I knew I wasn't going to be there much longer. Anyways, that's what, back to your question, that experience of the mental transformation, even, the opening up of my emotions, I was really shut down, right, from the abuse. And, I burned through girlfriends. I feel really sad for all of them, and I hope they forgive me. But, I'd be hanging out with girls, and they'd be like, knock, knock, anybody in there? And I'm like, I'm here. What are you talking about? Would kind of be nice to have a conversation. Like, what's that?
Yeah.
It was awful. Anyways, the meditation helped with that, but that required a lot more work. And that work started when I finished Buds and moved into Coronado apartment. And my next door neighbor was my future wife, and she was a marriage family therapist.
Probably a healthy person for you to start talking with.
It was, yeah. So
I'm just going to dissect all of your problems right for you.
Yeah, like, hey, Sandy, you want to go McPeas with me? She's like, no. I'm like, oh, really? She goes, you can go though. And I'm, immediately my higher self says, don't do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
she's baiting you.
Okay, I'm not going to go. What do you want to do? How about we sit here and talk about your family, which you said you had a perfect family. I'm like, I do have a perfect family. She goes, well, where do we start?
Teasing that thread out.
Yeah. So where I'm going is that, in the West, we're really taught a very kind of linear, materialistic view of development. Like, physical body is about the health, and your mental development really is academic. Maybe you get a little bit of concentration and focusing and motivation through athletics. But that's just the starting point. Those are like the prerequisites to full human, whole mind development. And so I experienced that. I developed my body to a very high level, but then, the sports and course, the karate was starting to train the mind, but as the meditation that really began to expand and open up and gave me access to my heart and started to like be motivated and not scared of like taking a look at my family of origin issues and do that emotional depth psychology. It became imperative, not something to fear. And I saw over a few years how critical that was, because it's a huge block for people. Like, you can only go so far because the emotional shadow stuff will always trip you up. And I use the term background of obviousness for unbeatable mind. It's like all that shadow shit, all those patterns that, it's like you're dropping little grenades around and you're not even aware of it, but everyone else is. It's because it's hidden from you, because it's part of your background, and you're focused out here, but all this stuff is basically how you show up, and it's obvious to everyone but you. And so it became more and more obvious to me that I had those patterns because of my meditation, but the meditation didn't erase those patterns. I had to find other means to really work on them. And like I said, it became not like a scary thing, but something that is like essential for my development to be the person that I knew that I was worthy to be, or was becoming. And if you get through the physical, mental, emotional, and you start to really get the ball rolling down the hill fast, then the intuitive side just starts to naturally open up. And the intuitive, as we know in the military, that happens when you're in a deep relationship with the team. We've been training together for months and years, and then you go into combat. You both experience that, like the intuitive nature of a team that is open to that and listening to their intuition. Pretty extraordinary. And they're even studying it now in the military. But it's also, but then a lot of the guys get out and they don't, they're not in the environment anymore, and it all shuts down because it gets blocked by all the emotional stuck energy. So I found that intuitive aspect really started to open it up. I'd be able to really get, kind of the messages clearly from my gut brain and my heart brain, and a lot of direct perception, a lot of insights that just like more information just came to me. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. All of the content creation, development of the content around SealFit and Unbeatable Mind, the whole Kokoro yoga program, all of that was like an intuitive synthesis of vast amount of knowledge that I had soaked up over the years. But a lot of it also, I think, just came through me. Like there's stuff that just, while I'm writing, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I'm like, I don't even know where that came from. That's really cool though. Thank you. Looking wrong. Anyways,
proud of myself.
Yeah, proud of myself. And then through the process, and I'm right now explaining kind of the book Uncommon, by the way, because these are the 5 mountains. You remember the 5 mountains, Kevin? Physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual development.
Okay.
Early in the days, we didn't talk much about this through SealFit, but when I built the Unbeatable Mind program, right, I really fleshed it out as a whole full-on integrated development program where we're going to develop yourselves, the members or the trainees, physically, mentally, emotionally, intuitionally, and spiritually, but we're going to do it together, which is really radically different than kind of the Western way of development, which is you go to the gym to get your body healthy over there, and it's all about the body, but it's not about the mind. It's not about, wholeness. It's just about health or looking good in the bathing suit. Okay, it's not bad, but it's incomplete. And mental development, like I said, is all about, listening to podcasts or reading a book or getting a degree or a certificate. Not bad, but very surface level, and you're training only one small aspect of your mind, and that's that rational, linear thinking mind. And then spiritual might be going to church on Sunday, or I believe in God, or I don't, right? I believe in nature or Gaia. And so spirituality is a belief, which is just a concept, right? So all of these things are fragmented, right? And everyone's so distracted and chasing the shiny ball that they're just kind of like running around adding new concepts to their concept matrix, and it's taking them further and further away from themselves. Well,
especially nowadays with the bombardment of information, like you're hearing all these business gurus and spiritual gurus and physical gurus. They're telling you, you need to be doing this. You need to be waking up and doing meditation, and then ice bathing,
Wim
and
Hof,
then
cold plunge.
Doing all these things. And people are just trying to shove all this stuff into their day, and it's probably stressing them out more because they're like, I'm told I need to do this stuff. It's good for me, so I should meditate every day and cold bath every day or cold plunge every day and work out every day and journal every day. And it's just like, it's so much stuff that people are giving themselves anxiety attacks by trying to de-stress their lives. Ironically, it's stressing or de-stressing their life is stressing them out. And so I think it's really important, the stuff that you teach of it doesn't need to be just piling all these things on. It's more of having a holistic approach and doing it with people too. Don't just do it yourself.
Do it with a team. We call that a community of practice. People who are really committed to both yours and their growth, non-judgmentally. And when you can integrate these things, like if you call, like the way this worked out for SealFit, even though I probably didn't articulate this time, it's a whole person 5-mountain training session, right? So we first of all talk about the spiritual, like why. For us, spirituality is getting out of your ego and connecting with a higher sense of why you're doing something, because it's aligned with why you're on this planet. Right? You have a purpose in archetypal journey. We're warriors. You could say that's probably our purpose, and we're warriors now, helping people, do the right thing in business and in their life, right? And so we really had a very strong intentionality of why we were training. And we weren't just doing it for our health. We weren't just doing it to look good in a bathing suit. Those are like nice byproducts, or in UDT shorts.
Nobody looks good in UDT shorts.
Nobody looks good in UDT.
except for that guy in Heartbreak Ridge. Who is that jacked guy that fought Clint Eastwood? If you're a 250-pound bodybuilder, you can look good in UDT shorts. No one else does.
No one else does, yeah. So then we would also breathe, fox breathe. And so we're bringing in breath, and breath is the bridge between the body and mind and the spirit. And so even though a lot of the trainees didn't really understand it, and we talked about the breath as kind of like the arousal control, but there's arousal control, there's attention control, there's concentration training. And as your mind gets refined to the breathing practice over time, then the breath will lead you deeper within. So box breathing is a secret weapon for integrated development because it crosses all 5 mountains: physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual. And then we would visualize the workout. Remember, different phases, but we would erase the workout and have the team visualize it and then, recite it back. So we're developing our visual capacity. And then we would go through the workout, and the workout wasn't like CrossFit. We had a high intensity kind of interval thing. We used a lot of CrossFit methods in the middle. Remember the work capacity? But we didn't treat it like a competition where you were out to win. We treated it like a competition where you're out to better yourself, but not at the expense of your team. Right? So if you're cranking away and you're ignoring your teammate who's doing sloppy moves, then you're wrong. Right? If you're cranking away and suddenly you're miscounting your reps because you have to be the fastest, then you're going to get your ass kicked, right? Because instructors are watching. So it really was the training was all about the team, right? Elevating the capacity of the team. But during the training, we would have periods of recovery where we bring people back to their breath, and we would have periods where we had to motivate people. And we taught people to begin to pay close attention to their internal dialogue, right? So when the fear wolf started to really nip at them, they could, intercept that, and redirect it to the courage wolf and maintain that with a mantra: feeling good, looking good, ought to be in Hollywood. These types of things. And so we were doing like multidimensional integrated development. And everybody, this is one of the things we teach now still with a much more refined thing, is like your physical training, which most people should be doing every day at some level, not the same training every day, different training every day, hard, soft, long, some recovery, lots of yoga, lots of, even walks and rocks and whatnot. That training session is your best opportunity to develop. And so that training session includes meditation, visualization, breath control, internal dialoguing, mantra, same as a mantra, done outside if you can with a team, with a focus on your team. And you could just literally, I could write an entire book about what I just said about the developmental benefits for your own evolution of training in that way, because you're bringing all these different aspects together, and now we're training them. And so, that's the thing. The human body is not, first of all, the body and the mind are not two things. It's one thing. And a life isn't split into all these different things. Like people look at their life as like, oh, I got my family life, and I got my work life, and I got my health over here, and I got my finances over there. It's not that way. Those are just descriptors. Your life is lived right from the center out as a whole life. But if you don't look at it that way, then you're gonna believe that it is these separate things, and then you're going to mentally separate into these things, and you're going to always feel fragmented, separated. And that is actually the definition of suffering in Buddhism, is that you believe you're a separate human being. That's the illusion. The illusion is you're separate, and that causes suffering. So integrated development, bringing all these aspects together, you start doing it with your, when you wake up in the morning ritual, you don't need to like methodically go through these things like a checklist, but just come back to yourself. And the best way to come back to yourself is internal dialogue, gratitude, forgiveness, optimism, and then the breath. The breath takes you deeper within, and then the breath will open up into attention control and concentration, where you're really gathering up your energy into a really like powerful stream of energy as opposed to frittered all over the place. And then you turn that energy around on itself, and you're looking for awareness. You're looking for the light within you. And that's what opens up the witnessing. The witnessing becomes permanent and online over time. So that you're looking at your thoughts as if, from a distance. So one of the metaphors we use, you become like a mountain, and your thoughts and emotions and the dramas of the world are like clouds passing by. And
I think that's really important stuff. You mentioned earlier, keeping the wolves at bay when you have those negative thoughts.
Yeah.
Making it through Buzz, I'm sure Q course is very similar. Most people don't quit because something is too hard. They quit because they start having that self-doubt, those negative thoughts of, this sucks right now, and it's probably going to continue on for perpetuity through the remainder of this course, this evolution. And they start breaking themselves down to the point where they're like, I can't do this anymore because I can't keep doing this every single day for, Buds itself is 6 months, and then you have more training and stuff after that. And so doing this type of work to condition the mind to have the thoughts of gratitude, the positive self-talk, and all the other things to learn to combat the negative side, because the negative side will come out. That's always there. It never goes away.
That's the ego is designed to be negative for survival.
Mm-hmm.
And the ego's sense of identity is essentially no different than the steady stream of thoughts, concepts, and beliefs that you cherish, that you take to be you. And this work will help you kind of disentangle from that, stand apart from that. And just like I was talking earlier, you begin to see that all is a story, starting from even your name. Like when you were born, you didn't have a name, nor did you need a name. But then someone named you, and then you take the name as, wow, that's me. That is the boundary of this body, and I'll call that Mark or Kevin. But it's just an idea. It's just a bunch of letters. It's actually meaningless. And then you start to see that every single thought you have, every single concept you have about who you are is virtual. It's an idea. And when you open up to that witnessing aspect of your witnessing capacity, every human has it, you begin to see all those, and you because you can stand apart from them. And the primary benefit is you don't get caught up in the dramas. You can laugh at them. You're like, holy shit, there it goes again. There's a pattern. There's a thing. There's a person doing it again, and they're all wrapped up in it, and I don't have to be wrapped up in that. And if you're going through Buds or Q course, and the instructors come down, Mark, do 1,000 burpees, which they did to me in Hell Week. We're going to get you to quit. And I just looked at that and smiled. Like, okay, this is just 1,000 burpees. This is fun, right? This guy just doing his job. He's probably bored.
He's going to get bored of watching you. It takes a while
but
to
I
do
could
it.
have gotten all wrapped up in that story. Like, oh my God, again, blah, blah, blah. No, I just stood apart. I was like, only have to do one burpee at a time. How hard could that be? You start to just live life with this really curious non-attachment. And then you stop putting negative energy into the system. And this is a reflective world, right? Everyone is living their own world. There's not one world, there's 8 billion worlds. And so your world is basically a reflection of what you put into it, what your expectations and beliefs and the energy you put into the world. So if you're putting fear into the world, you're going to have a fearful world that you see all around you. And if you're putting negativity in the world and judgment, you're going to be surrounded by negative and judgmental people.
You're seeing a lot of that with victimhood now too.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got to learn to really curate the quality of your thoughts and emotions, and make sure that you're only putting in, positive thoughts and non-judgmental, like your goodwill of everyone, all concerned, right? You wish for their success, and love, right? Put love in the world, and you will be getting back exactly that in spades. So, but you got to develop yourself to see the fear wolf, right? That's why the fear wolf is in your head, and the head is constantly thinking about survival and significance. And, it's the ego, like saying, I need to be important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine as long as it's not it's not your only sense of identity. So you can start to chip away at that. That's what the Zen process of like taming the ego, or like we were saying, check your ego. When you develop that witnessing capacity, it doesn't mean like suddenly the ego goes away or dies. And I've had people talk about, like, I had a death of the ego. I'm like, no, you'd be dead. No, the ego is just your sense of separate self. What happens is that the grip on the sense of separate self just begins to soften until you begin to see it as all just a bunch of concepts, stories. No different than the story of the state of Texas or California. Like, it's just a story, right? It's not real. You fly over California and you cross the border into Nevada, you don't see a line, and you don't see words that say California, Nevada. No, that's just a made up human story, just like the story of money, the story of our economy, the story of democracy, the story of all the isms. And so what happens is you begin to soften your grip on all those stories, because the more time you spend in introspection and in those witnessing awareness and non-dual state of awareness, where the real truth lies, you begin to see that that's not who you really are.
Yeah.
Right?
And is all this stuff in your new book, Uncommon, that's coming out? Or that came
I have
out?
a lot of, the book is meant to give people a path to developing themselves in this whole mind manner. Whole mind means, the opposite of whole mind is split mind. Split mind is where the ego's in charge. Whole mind is where your spiritual center, your witnessing awareness is in charge, and brings that online. And the process is through this development of these five developmental lines or capacities that we have: physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual. And so I have 5 sections in the book, each one committed to each of those, and with practices and kind of like a developmental journey or a path. So yeah, it's kind of what I talk about. And in the spiritual section, I have a lot of information. This is great for people in transition, which I know is one of your missions, and also people kind of setting out in life. So that's a transition, from kind of like college and even master's program, where you're not really out in the world, but you're still a young adult, and now you're going out into the world. So I have a lot of information about how to really go within to really understand, evoke, or have your purpose kind of be emergent to you, like it was for me when I was on the Zen bench and I kept experiencing warrior. So you can really clarify why it is you're on this planet, what's your purpose, and what you're going to do about it. And then what are the obstacles, right, that really get in people's way. Because it's a real shame when people have a desire, but they feel stuck and unwilling because of fear to leave their shitty job, right? Or they know they're on the wrong path, but they're just going to stick around for that retirement. We saw that in the military. And you end up with this kind of like defeatist mentality where you're just marking time. And that's no bueno, right? Your spirit is here for a very important reason. And if you don't find it and align with it, that's the Eastern principle of Dharma, is your calling. And it's really important to align with your calling and to get on with that work. Because if you don't, you're just going to accrue negative karma, which is the other side of Dharma, is the karma. So if you're putting negative energy out in the universe, that's karma. It's negative karma. So you got to get on with the business of clearing up negative karma and making sure that you're now creating positive karma, which will have great, benefits for this life and beyond. And if you're not aligned with your purpose, if you're doing something that you don't like and you're resenting it every day, then you're accruing negative karma. Remember I don't know if you guys have read the Bhagavad Gita, but it's one of classic spiritual texts from the Eastern traditions. And it's all about a warrior named Arjuna. And Arjuna is lined up for battle. And the people who are battling are his cousins and his uncles, right? It's the family that is usurping the throne. And he has a classic kind of quit moment, right? He's like, I don't want to do this. You know what I mean? I don't want to kill my brothers. I don't want to go to war. I don't want to see any more bloodshed. And most people, would be like, great, he's evolved, right? He wants peace. And he has this conversation with this fellow named Krishna, who's an embodiment of God. He's his charioteer, And Krishna says, oh, no. You do not get to avoid this one. Because this is your calling. This is your dharma. You are a warrior. And if you do not go and engage in this battle, then you will bring great suffering upon yourself in this lifetime, and you will endure negative karma, and you'll come back and have to repeat this. And so he ends up, listening to him. And Krishna shows him like what is really going on, and that this whole world that we live in is like a dream. Mm-hmm. It's a projection. It's a mind-generated fantasy, whether there's a great conflict going on or whether America gets taken over by the socialists, which it already has, by the way.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. And they're not going to leave power quickly or easily. At any rate, stand by for that one. It's all a mind-generated fantasy, so it's not real. At the same time, you chose to be here for a reason, so play the game and play it full out. So one of the mistakes in developmental work is, and you see this quite a bit in the yoga community, right? Is like, oh, I'm all now super spiritual, and so they develop this kind of like aloofness. I'm not attached, and so it's a prescriptive descriptive fallacy. The non-attachment is the fruits of the labor of spiritual work. It's not a practice. Doing it as a practice is like doing violence to yourself. Well, I'm not going to be attached to my family. Really? No, it doesn't work that way.
It's like that shirt that says spiritual as fuck.
Bypassing. What's that?
It's like that shirt that says spiritual as fuck.
Exactly.
It's like it becomes a new calling card of look how spiritual I am. It's the same people that talk about the ego death, the festival goers that are like, I'm so much more spiritual than you, and it becomes a competition about all the things that go back to what we were talking about. Yeah,
it's all ego co-opting. You might have this is rampant in the psychedelic world, which is now there's a lot of great benefits for healing, especially for vets. I highly recommend it for vets, and if someone for addressing emotional blockages and trauma. But psychedelics are not a spiritual practice. They're not. You have to be very careful, because you have these really cool experiences, and the ego goes, yes, that is me. I am God. I am non-dual. I am that. And then you get that spiritual bypass, and that becomes a major obstacle to future development.
Well, I met a guy. I did an ayahuasca retreat. It was a 2-day period. Amazing experience. And I was talking to one of the guys, and he was there for his 90th, 90 thing. I'm like,
dude, some of these people,
in 5 years,
once they get on it, man, they just like don't stop. Everybody dude, that's wild.
I was moved by, again, that I'm really into yoga, like traditional yoga, and some of the masters, right, who have written books or had books written about what they said. And Ramana Maharshi is one of those, like pure non-dual Jnani masters. Jnani is the path of wisdom, pure absolute non-duality experience that he, and he would teach, but he didn't write. But one day, I think it was like Ram Dass or Timothy Leary, or the folks really into the LSD movement, and of course the Beatles went down and sat with him and some other spiritual leaders from India, but they brought him LSD because they wanted to validate that they were having the same experiences but quicker with LSD that Ramana Maharshi was experiencing, or the yogis were experiencing, because they believed they were. And so Maharshi was like, okay, yeah. So he takes a hit, and then he takes another, and then he takes another, and then he takes another. He gets up to like 8. And he's just staring at these people. And then he smiles and he says, oh, I see. You want to feel powerful. And then he just ignored them after that. You want to feel powerful. Isn't that cool? So what he was saying was, this is the ego. Now, again, it's okay. It's great to have a mystical experience. And if psychedelics can unlock that for you, great. But it's all mind-generated fantasy still. And yes, you can maybe tap into some other astral stuff going on, but it's not the same, right? The thing about the spiritual mountain is, like, when you really begin to understand, life gets very simple. And you're not needing to chase experience, mystical, or even, like all the people that you and I podcast with who are doing the next hardest, baddest thing, and they're the only one in the world who's ever done it. I've interviewed like countless people. Yeah, and I'm not only doing the 7 summits, but I'm going to run 16 marathons and 16 pieces of land in 16 days. And then I'm going to go on a 100-day silent retreat. Oh, great. Sounds fun. Go for it.
It all becomes something to...
What are you looking for, right?
Yeah, they're trying to escape something else.
They're running from something, and what they're running from is the quietness that is required to actually find it within yourself, what you're looking for. And most people are they're like either running in small circles by doing activity-based spiritual stuff, like petitionary prayer, religious services, even like using a mindfulness app and thinking it's spiritual. Like you're always doing, you're looking. Oh, I'm looking. Is that it? Oh, that didn't work. Let me try this other one. And you'd be far more effective to stop all that and just sit in silence and just wait for the mind to settle down. Just wait. That's essentially what the Zen practice was, is a process of clarifying the mind through the breathing and through concentration to get you to where you could just sit in complete, utter stillness beyond the thoughts. This guy named Punjab, another Indian saint, said, sitting in stillness is the most important thing for you to do. Don't waste time not doing it.
I think it's super important today. I mean, yeah. I suffer. My cell phone is my greatest ally and worst enemy. I'm constantly at battle with it. You get to a stoplight, and instead of just sitting there at a stoplight, I immediately reach down and grab my phone, like, oh, let me look at LinkedIn or something real quick, because there's something so important that I need to do at a stoplight while I wait the 30 seconds for it to change. Or you sit down on the couch and there's nothing happening, so you reach for your phone, or you're waiting for something to cook while making dinner, you grab your phone.
Yeah, totally.
It's becoming...
It's a real practice to not do that. It's one of the most important practices, right? So like you can look at, beginning phase of like integrated development, but also the spiritual development is like, I've got to do it in a set time, right? Morning, evening, Thursday night meditation group, Sunday, whatever. But ultimately you take it off the mat or off the bench, and it is wherever you are, there you are, right? So while you're cooking and you feel the urge to pick up your phone, you watch it, but you don't pick up the phone. Even if you do pick up the phone, you watch that pattern and that urge, and like, oh, interesting, look at that. Next time that happens, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to pick up the phone. I'm just going to. And so what happens is these patterns, which have been trained and conditioned, instead of engaging in them, you just watch them. The pattern still arises. You feel that, right? But you don't begin to develop the non-action, right, part of it. You don't act on it. And what happens is you begin to decharge that pattern. So it still arises, but it's like a spinning fan. If you turn it off, it still spins. And sometimes you're like, did I turn it off? You can't really tell, but it's slower and slower and slower. And then you're like, okay, I got it. Well, the patterns do the same thing. You disengage, don't do it. And then you watch it. Next time it comes up, you watch it again. You're like, oh, there it is. Don't do it. Turn your attention to something else, or just sit and watch that and let that feeling go away. And then the next time it comes up, it's just a little softer, right? You've started to unplug the energy, the electricity. And then within a few months, it's gone. You're completely comfortable leaving your phone alone, at home, not touching it. And the proof is that when you do that and you finally pick it up, at the end of the day, you give yourself permission to pick it up and check your LinkedIn and check your email. You didn't miss a thing.
Yep.
And in fact, you probably saved yourself an enormous amount of time because your ego would have wanted to respond to everything. And you probably could have gotten, set up 10 meetings that you didn't need to have. And, you probably would have gotten in the way of your team solving an important problem that they could solve on their own. There's so many things that I've learned that I just didn't need to get involved in, that then I have to disentangle from. Right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm working at a phase of my life where
really
I'm
difficult thing.
It is difficult, but that's why it's a practice. We say in the SEALs, if it doesn't suck, we don't do it. It's an important practice. It's the hardest practice, but it's the most profound, because you can apply this to everything.
Yeah. I was say that it's really important for entrepreneurs, particularly who are already wearing multiple hats, and they feel like they need to do the marketing and the sales and the development and the finance, and like all these different things. And so they're already in that mindset of, I need to do more because there's all these things on my plate I need to do. And so really having a concerted effort and a process of saying, this is something I actually have to do. This is something that I don't need to do. And this is something that I just need to get rid of, even though it's a distracting, shiny object.
Right.
Like, updating my website. The website's fine for right now.
Yeah.
But you have it in your head. I need to do this thing. And if I'm constantly working, then I must be productive and I must be making progress. You've built a number of businesses. I'm sure you've gone through all kinds of levels of teaching yourself what's actually important and what isn't.
Right. And now I'm very, very discerning, right? I try to do less things better. If it's not like a super hell yes with a capital H and a capital Y, it's a no. And, and sometimes I still get caught up in stuff, then I'm like, okay, shoot, there's the lesson again. Like, pause, stop putting energy into the system. And then the system stops pushing back at you. Right? One of my favorite quotes is the ego is resistance to life. The ego has a sense of neediness, and so it's always putting stuff out there, which then, the world is pushing back. But life doesn't need that. Like, life doesn't need your ego. Like, this is the idea of way, action without the actor. So the ego is the actor. Get the actor out of the way, and life still happens. Things that need to get done happen. What gets done with way is what absolutely must get done, but is often obscured by the ego's neediness and codependence and the training of our culture to say yes because you don't want to let people down. And so you get entangled in all this shit, and then oftentimes what must get done gets buried or gets sidelined because you're not listening to that inner voice.
So what is your oh, sorry, go on, Greg.
Where does someone like you that's been practicing this for so long, like, I'm sure that you still face challenges with this. Where do you struggle as somebody that's been practicing this for a really long time?
I would say this is it, right? But I feel like I'm at the tail end of. Let me rephrase it. I'm not the kind of guy who's going to walk away from things. Just like I didn't walk away from my MBA CPA. I finished that stuff up. I finished my black belt, and then I went into SEALs. I'm very proud of my businesses, but I have zero attachment and zero interest to be involved in the dramas and in the running of them anymore, right? And I know this is going to be hard for entrepreneurs to hear because we're at the beginning of their journey. It's a great journey. If you can engage with some of the principles we're talking about here and be not attached to the outcomes, make, just like a SEAL, make your plan, but don't expect the plan to survive contact with reality. It's better to, develop your business around a sound set of principles and clarity about what you want to build. For instance, I lack clarity. I for years I thought, well, SealFit can be a really big business and maybe exit for $50 or $100 million. I'm like, it was never meant to be that way. But as a small niche business generating $5 million in revenue, extremely profitable, like, it's been very lucrative for me at a personal level because I own 100% of it, right? And as an entrepreneur, you're like, I'm going to take investors, and you got VC and everything. Guess what? You're earning a salary. And now you're locked up for an exit that may or may not happen. So you got to think carefully about that. Or do you want a business that you own, or own, with a really good partner? Not the kind of partners I had in my first business, but like really good partner. You share the same ethos, share the same vision, and you generate a business that, is the right size. You don't get over your skis. And guess what? You might be kicking off, $500,000 of cash or $1 million of cash a year. And that's nice, right? You do that over 10, 20 years, and it's as good as any exit,
I think a lot of entrepreneurs lack that. They see that big, glorious exit or opportunity with like, I just want to build it bigger and more and better.
Right.
When
bigger usually isn't better. Right?
Yes, you're just layering complexity and more costs and liability. When you have a 5-person business, it's much more easier to manage. You can control all aspects of it. If you have a 500-person business, it's beyond you now. Like
That's right.
There are some small businesses that are 500 people businesses where they control all aspects of it, but that's not the norm. That you usually have investors and other lenders and people that have a seat at the table now. So you've just diluted yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're now beholden to other people.
You built yourself a job.
Yeah. It is really what it is. Where if you have something like SealFit and you've developed a brand for yourself around your books, your podcasts, your newsletter, your businesses. Now all that is creating individual value that's all funneling to the same spot that you can control, and you can live a much freer, more pleasant life.
Right. And that's I think the ultimate drive for every human is freedom. And so when you develop the concept for your business or your transition plan, it's very important to think, is this going to lead to more freedom or less freedom? And sometimes you have to go through less freedom to get to more freedom, right? Because you just have to do what you got to do to make money, and et cetera. Our economy is set up that way. Economy is kind of a form of like temporary enslavement until you figure it out, and you're like, oh, I got this. I can move away from the slavery of debt, peonage, and hands tied to a corporate ladder, thinking this is who I am. I got to do this. And so that's why it's very important, everything we've talked about, to keep yourself healthy, right? Physically healthy, because another form of slavery is slavery to addictions and to like an unhealthy body that then gets trapped on pharmacological drugs and disease. That's not freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So getting the body really healthy, which means the brain's healthy, and then developing a practice, integrated practice where every morning we call it winning your mind before you step foot in the battlefield. Clarify your mind, breathe, do the box breathing or whatever your breathing practice is. Visualize success, visualize the future self as this perfectly healthy, aligned, and on purpose human being, and make sure that you're clear about what to say yes to and what not to say yes to. And then you do your physical training, which is that integrated, so that's an awareness development. You're expanding your awareness, expanding your sense of self. You're moving away from the egoic, fear-based thinking patterns. And then your evening ritual is really important. I look at these as two bookends, right? The evening ritual is where it's like the Navy SEAL debrief. Can you imagine, how as a SEAL, and I'm sure in the Special Forces too, like if you went out on an op, whether it was a training or real op, and you just came back and just kind of like threw your gear down and went and turned on the TV or the first-person shooter game, or went and had a beer, and you didn't debrief it to learn from the mistakes, we would all suck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that we never did that in SEALs. We debrief everything. And so the evening ritual is your personal debrief of your day. And you look back at the day from the very start and you say, okay, and you go through it in your mind's eye and say, what went well and what didn't go well and what did I learn? This is extraordinarily valuable for entrepreneurs because you just take the time. It doesn't take long, 5 or 10 minutes with your journal. Back to the day. Oh yeah, that meeting was awesome. Why? Oh, because I was like really fired up because I did my morning ritual and I did a great workout and I was positive and I was clear about what my expectations were and I was present. Great. Learn from that. More of that. What didn't go well? Oh man, that interaction with my partner was awful. Great. Why? Well, maybe he said something or she said, or maybe I said something because I was triggered. okay, well, maybe there's an opportunity to clean it up. And so the evening ritual is a great opportunity to eradicate regrets before they grow. Many people, they don't have this practice, and they just sweep all this stuff under the rug, and all this kind of resentment and lack of trust builds up, right? And lack of trust is corrosive. And many cultures, environments are filled with kind of like little trust breaches left and right that over time really corrode the culture. And so the evening ritual is a fantastic opportunity to look at your day and look at the interactions you have and how you behave, how you showed up, and be like, oh yeah, in those scenarios or that scenario, I could have done better. And so what are you going to do differently? Number one, and what are you going to do to fix it? Number two, and take action on it immediately if you can, or plan it tomorrow.
I wonder how many
It's
people
not,
actually
it's not
do
hard, but it's not easy either.
Yeah, simple, not easy.
Simple, not easy. Yeah, better said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wonder how
think
many
it's a
people
really-
actually do that. I don't think because I mean I would say 1% of people actually debrief their day. I know
Probably.
I can be better at it for sure.
100%.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is one my
it's a great
clients,
metric that you were talking about with, or not metric, but analogy of the special forces community doing debriefs. We always did it,
always.
but I don't I'll be first to admit I don't do it very often in my own life. But it was so part of the battle rhythm of being in the teams. You come back, you put your gear down. Actually, a lot of time you didn't even put your gear down. Like you put your weapon away and you just immediately go to the debrief room and talk about stuff. Yeah, I don't think I do it nearly often enough.
When I teach Unveil Mind, there's all the conceptual, then it's like, okay, get right down to practice. And so everyone jumps into the morning ritual and experienced phenomenal benefits from the morning ritual. But everyone's too busy in the evening, or they're tired from work, and they got family, and take the kids here and there, dinner, blah blah blah, and maybe more work, which is pretty common. And so we kind of like harp on them like this: the morning ritual and the evening ritual are they're bookends. They need to go together. If you look at your day as like a container, right? The morning ritual seals the base of the container. It locks in all the goodness and it protects it from any negative energy or anything from sneaking in there. And then you go through your day and this container gets filled up. Well, it gets filled up with good things and it gets filled up with bad things. So the evening ritual, it's like before you put the top on, right? You've got an opportunity to crack it open and to look into your day and be like, oh yeah, there's some real gems in there. Well, good. Remember those gems. Celebrate. Because oftentimes we're moving so fast, we don't even take the time to appreciate the wins and to learn from the wins. But then guess what? There's also some turds in there. And you're going to want to dump those turds out. And then you're going to put that lid on and you're going to seal it up. And that way, especially you go into the night sleep cycle, you're not going to be processing all the negative shit that happened during the day. Your body mind system is going to be able to go have much more deeper sleep, and maybe you'll be working on some positive lessons and some insightful things that'll come to you. It's an incredible practice, and I really appreciate Nakamura, my Zen/martial arts teacher. He used to give these little Zen talks after our Thursday meditation sessions, and one of them, and he would on a chalkboard, with his white squeaky chalk, write the kanji characters, and we're all like wondering what that means. And then underneath he would write the translation in English. And one of them was one day, one lifetime. And then you give a little talk, and he said, this is the warrior's way, is every day. First of all, every day is the potential to be your last day. Because you don't know, right? If you get struck down or, it could be your day. So make it the best day ever, right? Make it the day that you're proud of. Like, make it like if you're going to go out of your life today, that this is good. Like you've done everything, you've said everything you need to do. You were operating in perfect awareness and alignment. You didn't have any regrets. And the second kind of way to look at this is every day is an opportunity for a lifetime of learning and growth. But you got to pay very close attention and take it seriously. Not like, seriously, all seized up, but like, Yeah. Pay attention every moment. Pay attention. There's that trigger. Don't engage it. There's an opportunity. Appreciate it. And ultimately that becomes a practice. It's like in the SEALs, we run in the grinder and it says the only easy day was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that means today is my day. Tomorrow's an idea too, because we don't have time to think about tomorrow at Buds. It's about today. One day, one lifetime. But you start the day by winning in your mind, and you end the day with an evening ritual recapitulation, regret eradication, and then during the day you maintain as much awareness as possible to keep on curating the negative patterns and the negative thinking and the negative conditioning and replacing it with positive.
One thing I'd add to that is there's so many opportunities. I mean, there's so much wasted time just in general. Like I know I could pick out, like if I were to actually allot my time, and I think I'd be like sick to my stomach seeing how I spend my time. But one of those, like there's just so many other ways, like just in your day to like actually like build in mindfulness practices and do this integrative stuff. It's like brushing your teeth.
That's right.
Like there's just so many
walking my dogs
from work.
We call it spot drills, right? So at the after every little moment of deep work, like if you have like this, right? At the end of this, you take 10 minutes. Don't do anything. Maybe box breathe, take a walk around the block. Give your mind time to simulate. Just open up, right? People go from one thing to another, and you don't have the opportunity to simulate and to drill a little bit more. Right? So if you did 5 minutes every hour, there's another practically hour of, let's say, mindfulness training or meditation or, movement practice that you add to your day's practice kit. And all that stacks up. You got your morning work routine, you got your physical workout, which becomes a 5-mountain, integrated development. You got your evening ritual, and you got these spot drills. And without even really any effort, because it's all joyful and so rewarding, you've got 2 hours of training your body, mind, system every day. And that accrues, we call it accelerated development. That starts building a lot of momentum. And you can have like great strides, like extraordinary developmental leaps within, short period of time. And I mean like within months and then several years, you're like transformed. Whereas without doing this type of work, it's kind of like catch as catch can. Life may smack you down like we talked about earlier, and that might wake you up and get you on your path. But this type of training is for those kind of already on their path. They're already like, oh yeah, this is important. I am responsible for my development. I have the capacity to grow and evolve. And now I have a path to do it and some competent, training and methods. And so then it becomes very motivating. The Buddha said, even if you just hearing about enlightenment sets you on the path to enlightenment, right? Because you could have gone through countless lifetimes with zero interest, never hearing about it, which is the normal state of humanity. But just hearing about it and sparking an interest sets you on the path to the ultimate spiritual evolution. So those of you who are listening, well, good on you.
This right here is the starting point.
This is the starting point.
And so for people looking to, if they haven't already heard of you, you have the book Uncommon that just got released. You have your podcast, The Mark Devine Show. You're still doing SealFit, and you have Unbeatable. Where's the best place for them to get in contact with you, to follow your information? Do you have Instagram, website, newsletter?
Yeah, we've got on social media, it's at Real Mark Devine, like Facebook and Instagram. My website is markdevine.com, where I have kind of just general about me and my books, and if someone wants to like book private coaching or speaking. Unbeatable Mind is kind of the integrated vertical development, accelerated development that we've been talking through, which is the book Uncommon is based on, and that's at unbeatableminded.com. We got some great ways to engage with that. And if there's any questions, just send us an email at info@markdevine.com, and we'll help you out knowing where to get started. And in SealFit, we still run the crucibles. We're starting to narrow that. Like we've been going almost 18 years since 2006, right? And the world is so distracted, especially after COVID. So we're not getting like 100 people to sign up for Coro anymore, which is too bad. It's such an extraordinary event, but we still
oh my God,
run.
those were incredible.
We have a September Crucible. We now do 6, 12, 24, and the 50 hour. But starting next year, we're going to do them just once a year in the summer.
Okay.
Yeah. I think those are, again, those will run their path. But there's such an incredible event, really transformative. And there's so many people from the world who train for them, come to them. I'm going to continue offering it. It's like a public service.
It's much needed in today. So it's, these types of things are important. Yeah. And you've been doing it for so long. Like I'm sure you have it down to just science of how to really get the most out of the time.
Definitely. And that's at SealFit.com.
Awesome.
Appreciate you guys for having me on.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Good luck with the book launch and all the things you have going on. Like the amount of stuff you're juggling is absolutely astonishing. So best of luck.
Amazing. I practice what I preach. My life is very simple. Right. It really is. I don't really do anything before 10. Your podcast was an exception because, I love
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I don't do anything before 10 in the morning, business related. And I'm usually done by 3. I'm very selective about what I do.
I love it.
I have got a great team. I give them tons of latitude. I spend a lot of time with my family and my wife. But yeah, again, that's an outcome of the practice. Over time, what's important, what you thought was important, it becomes less and less important. And the things that you blew off, but you knew, hey, that might be beneficial, become more and more important. Right?
Yeah.
And
it comes down to setting those priorities.
That's where the juice is, right? When I'm sitting in silence and meditating, that's where I get all my good ideas. And if I wasn't doing that, I'd be running around like a chicken with my head cut off, like it was, when I started my first business.
Yep. But you have to go through those learning experiences to know how to actually build your life meaningfully.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. It's been an honor to speak with you. There's so many nuggets of wisdom in here that we're going to have to sift through.
Oh, man, I slammed the M button.
Yeah.
Chrissy's going to have a lot of work ahead of her.
That's hilarious. You guys are awesome. Mark, great interviews, and I really appreciate the work you're doing. It's really important.
Our pleasure.
Thanks, Mark.
Hoo-yah.